Welcome back to Freight Week STL 2026. Thank you to our sponsors for their generous support of this annual event. Today we'll be talking about how public and private sector partners work together to keep freight on the Mississippi River moving safely and reliably to its destination. We'll discuss barge operations in the St. Louis region and the role of river engineering and maintenance, as well as how ongoing coordination supports system resilience, navigation, and economic competitiveness. Joining us today are Randy Chamness from American Commercial Barge Line and Bradley Krischel from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Welcome, Randy and Bradley. We'll kick things off with some self-introductions. Randy, let's begin with you.
Sure. Hi, Mary. I'm Randy Chamness. I'm Vice President for Vessel Operations for American Commercial Barge Line. I'm also the past chairman of the Lower Mississippi River Committee, also known as LOMARC. And I'm also currently ACBL's representative on REDIF, which is the River Industry Executive Task Force. And both of those work with our various industry partners, with AWO, WCI, et cetera, in partnering to advocate for our industry and work with the Army Corps and the U.S. Coast Guard and really making our inland waterways as safe and as efficient as possible. And we work with great partners all throughout the industry. Although I represent ACBL, the good thing is that I also represent and work with all of our industry partners. And it's all about facilitating commerce through our inland waterways and everything we can do to work with the Coast Guard and the Corps to make that happen.
Bradley, your turn.
Hello, my name is Bradley Krischel. I worked at the Corps of Engineers, St. Louis District since 2008, so a little over 17 years now. I've worked in the hydraulics and hydrology branch my entire career. Almost all that time has been dedicated to river engineering, which has mostly been focused on designing river training structures. Those are rock structures that constrict the channel, scour the river in key areas to provide sufficient depth for navigation, or by using structures to provide some form of environmental benefit as well. Sometimes, I guess most of the time, it's a combination of both of those. When I started the Corps, I was working on small-scale physical models. Those are called hydraulic sediment response models. Those are approximately the size of billiard tables. But as time went on, we've moved to more numerical modeling. So those became widely accepted tool for modeling river systems. I guess now I have a slightly more senior role, so I'm not modeling as much as I used to. But I appreciate you including the Corps of Engineers in this event and look forward to our discussion.
Our first question will be for Randy. Can you tell us a little bit more about American Commercial Barge Line and provide an overview of your operations in the bi-state St. Louis region?
Sure, Mary's. ACBL, we operate 130 towboats that range anywhere from horsepower from 600 horsepower to 11,000 horsepower. We operate on all the main rivers. We operate from St. Paul to New Orleans, from Brownsville to Panama City, and from Chicago to the Gulf, and then also from Pittsburgh south on the Ohio rivers. We've got all the rivers covered. We have a major footprint, and in the St. Louis region is about 70% of our fleet flows through the greater St. Louis area for barges destined to and from the Illinois and the upper Mississippi River. We have about 3,200 barges in our operating network, 2,000 plus employees throughout that live in almost every state in the country. So, we've got a big geographic footprint. We're headquartered in Jeffersonville, Indiana, with major offices in Paducah, Kentucky, and Convent, Louisiana. ACBL is a very diverse, one of the most fully integrated barge lines in the industry, meaning, we not only have shifting at our facilities and terminals, but we also have our mainline tows that move not only dry cargo, but also integrated with our liquid fleet. And then we have our unit tow business that also tows throughout our operating system. Anyway, happy to be a part of ACBL, and I'm really proud of what we do and representing all of our employees and what we do for our customers. Providing a high level of customer service is really important to ACBL, and we look forward to continuing that. In the St. Louis region, we've also got our Western terminal, which has been in operation for 45 plus years. For many years, that terminal moved 10 million tons of product a year through that. We're currently going through a transition where that's going to be, that facility will be transitioned to a multi-commodity terminal. And so really excited about that. It's a pretty significant investment that the company's putting into that Western terminal to be able to move. Currently in its history, we've moved coal, but we're going to transition that to move other commodities as well. So really excited about that opportunity for Western terminal and what that can do for our customer base up there.
Bradley, what can you tell us about the Corps' operations in the bi-state St. Louis region?
Yeah, so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers St. Louis District consists of approximately 700 employees and plays a really important role in keeping one of the country's busiest waterways moving through this region here. In our bi-state region, Missouri and Illinois, we're responsible for about 300 miles of the Mississippi River, and that's a key part of the inland navigation system. It's a significant reach, and it's managed by highly specialized team of engineers, operators, and also field staff who are constantly monitoring the river and the conditions. I work in the hydrology and hydraulics branch, which consists of about 50 people. And one of our core missions is to maintain the federally authorized navigation channel, and that's 9 feet deep, 300 feet wide. And on a river like the Mississippi, that's not something you just can set and forget. It takes constant monitoring and a proactive approach as well. And what makes this challenging is that the river's very dynamic. It's always changing. And that's why we have to take that proactive approach to keep traffic moving safely and efficiently through the region. That includes targeted dredging to remove sediment buildup, also maintaining and repairing our river training structures that help guide the flow and self-scour the channel and provide adequate depth, installing and maintaining revetments to stabilize its bank lines, and then in some extreme cases, we've even completed rock removal in areas where there's rock outcroppings at the bottom of the river. So during extreme low water, some of those rock outcrop area elevations are actually the limiting factor for being able to provide the congressionally mandated channel depths. But all this really ties back to the, I guess, bigger picture is that the Mississippi River moves over 500 million tons of cargo every year, including about half of all the U.S. grain exports. So when we're doing our job well in the St. Louis region, we're helping keep the supply chains moving, supporting the broader U.S. economy. And at the end of the day, our goal is pretty straightforward, I guess, and basically trying to stay ahead of issues and keep traffic moving safely and reliably.
Randy, companies like yours depend so heavily on the reliability of the inland waterways. How does your organization coordinate with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to facilitate the flow of your vessels?
Well, so Mary, it's a year-long partnership. Everyone always focuses on low water or high water, particularly dredging season, but really it's a year-long partnership that even during when we have normal conditions, we work with the Army Corps and identify. The river has a sense of predictability to it, where we know we're going to have some trouble issues, and we work closely with the Army Corps to identify those and then prioritize those projects on what we need to do. Is it going to be dredging? Is it going to be some kind of dike structure to help the channel of self scour, as Bradley mentioned, where we can reduce the need for dredging in the future? Proactive dredging is another big issue where we've tried to get dredges in place sooner than where we actually have a problem, to get a pilot channel cut that will save us time whenever we know that area is going to be before it turns critical. So there's a number of things that we do, but really it's the close collaboration with industry and the Army Corps to go through and prioritize these critical areas and really work to facilitate the flow of commerce whenever we know that it's going to be needed the most. But a lot of the work is done not just in dredging season, as I mentioned, but really in the off season whenever we're planning and collaborating and communicating on how we can work together in these trouble areas that we know we're going to see to keep the channel open. It's really all about being efficient and keeping the channel open. And even whenever we do have dredges working around those rolling closures to limit the impacts to moving traffic to where we can all deliver our customers' cargo in a timely manner. So it's a really close coordination that we have, not just with ACBL, but all of industry with the Army Corps throughout the various districts. But really, the St. Louis district is key to that because there's so much tonnage that flows through that district for export, and it's really crucial to our operating network and to all of the operators that call the river system home.
Bradley, give us your perspective on how the Corps coordinates with private sector river users to balance the navigation needs, system constraints, safety, and environmental concerns.
Yeah, from the Corps' perspective, balancing all those items really comes down to one core principle. It's consistent two-way communication with the people who are actually out on the river and using the river every day. We don't operate in a vacuum, and the system works best when there's a steady exchange of information between the Corps and the Coast Guard, navigation industry, other river users. So one of the key tools we use to support that is what we call the weekly navigation channel condition status report. It's a report that's been in place since 2012. It's a collaborative product. It pulls in input from core districts, U.S. Coast Guard, and our industry partners and other river users as well. What makes the report valuable is that it gives everyone a shared, up-to-date picture of what's happening across the system, highlights things like current forecasted water levels, where dredging operations are underway. Again, kind of what Randy was hitting on. That helps them plan for any sort of closures due to dredging, working around that dredging operation. Also, any special instructions for specific river reaches. So if there's a high spot somewhere in the river, we can put out virtual buoys and make that known on that call as well. And even track seasonal considerations like ice conditions. So during the winter, we're typically tracking where the ice is, when it's going to be clearing out, all that kind of stuff. So whether you're a river user on this side of managing infrastructure or you're working on the industry side, you're working from the same baseline information. Just as important, it helps maintain what we think of as the common operating picture. So river conditions can change really quickly, and when they do, whether it's a closure, a restriction, a safety notice, we want to make sure that that information is getting out quickly and consistently. That way, operators like Randy, they can make informed decisions and reduce risk across the system. But I guess at the end of the day, it's really about partnership, communication. The Corps brings the infrastructure and system management kind of side of things, but the private sector brings a lot of the real-time operational awareness about what's going on. And when we can combine those things through our regular communication and that document, shared reporting tools, we're in a much better position to keep the system moving safely and efficiently.
Bradley, let's shift gears a little and talk specifically about how the Corps is adapting river operations on the Mississippi, Illinois, and Missouri rivers to handle increased swings between low water and high water conditions.
Yeah, that's a great question because what we're seeing in the region is a much wider swing between extremes. So periods of very low water followed by major flood events, and that's really forcing us to adapt on how we operate. A big part of that starts with trying to anticipate future conditions better than we have before. We're always working to improve forecasting, both short-term, long-term, and seasonal, so we can make more informed decisions about reservoir releases, navigation support, flood risk management. It's no longer enough just to react to conditions, but we have to stay a step ahead of what the system might be doing. At the same time, we're using much more advanced technology to understand what's actually happening in the river. So high-resolution surveys, including LiDAR and bathymetric data as well, that gives us more of a detailed picture of channel conditions, sediment movement, how the river's evolving over time. That level of detail is really improving our ability to manage both low water navigation challenges and high water flood risks. But we're also relying more on aerial photography and helicopter reconnaissance as well. Those tools let us quickly assess conditions over long stretches of the river. Let's look at things like levee performance, areas of erosion, unexpected flow patterns that you can't just fully capture from collecting data on the ground. So, of course, levee safety is a huge part of this conversation. A large levee failure could lead to concerns of channel cutoff, which could have a significant impact to the Corps' ability to maintain navigation. So through the Corps' levee safety program, we're closely working with our local and state partners to assess levee conditions, prioritize risks, improve system reliability. All that includes everything from inspections, risk assessments, to rehabilitation projects, and also better communication with communities and their level of protection. But I guess when you put all this together, it's really about combining better forecasting, better data, strong partnerships to manage a river system that's becoming more dynamic and frankly, just less predictable.
Randy, how much do increased swings between low water and high water conditions or changing conditions, such as ice buildup on the inland waterways, impact your operations?
Well, Mary, so it definitely brings its own set of challenges. And I say a lot of times the river is not necessarily as bad whenever it's high water or low water. The river is the most dangerous when it's in transition from one to the other. And anytime those cycles happen, it brings on a whole new set of challenges. That's when the sediment is on the move, so to speak. And the question is not is it going to be deposited, but when and where. And then what is it going to be in the channel, and is it going to have a negative impact on the channel? So that's really our biggest concern whenever we see these vast fluctuations in river stages. And then you mentioned ice. We just come off of one of the worst ice events we've had in several years. So, typically industry, we manage through the ice. We don't just cease operations. In most cases, we continue. We restrict our tows to where we can still move safely, but still be somewhat productive, although a little bit less than normal, obviously, but also as efficient as we can. But this last year, ice was really heavy on our equipment from an industry perspective, and as a result, we've had cargo claims, damage to barges and boats. But that this was an extreme year. So typically, we go in and out of the ice season, which usually happens late January into February. And then by March, we're typically out of it. But it has had an impact. And this last year was worse than probably the last 8 or 9 years. But we're on the downhill side of it, and still kind of assessing damages from that event. But overall, it did have a pretty big economic impact to industry as a whole, just because of, it slowed our network down, our overall network down. And whenever you cut off, at that time when we're not operating on the upper Miss and you're only operating on on 3 or 4 rivers, and you cut that river off pretty much, completely, it really slows the industry network down. And then that creates bottlenecks throughout our operating network, throughout the system. And it takes a while to overcome that. But I think we've learned a few things from the 2026 ice storm, and we'll apply those this next season. But overall, we probably could have done a little bit of a better job of being prepared. But at the end of the day, because it turned so cold so quickly, that's what got us. And really, you get to see the congestion in and around the locks. Obviously, as the harbors get backed up as well, but the locks are really where we start to see those backups that just. It's a trickle effect through the rest of the industry, not just on that river. Then it translates to other rivers and really has a negative impact on our overall operations.
Bradley, final question for you. Looking specifically at the St. Louis region, what recent improvements or planned investments are you most excited about?
Yeah, and this kind of ties into what Randy was just talking about in terms of having backups at locks. So one of the projects I'm most excited about in the St. Louis region is a major infrastructure investment at Lock and Dam 25 near Winfield, Missouri. We're in the process of designing and constructing a new 1,200-foot lock, which is a really significant upgrade for that part of the Mississippi River system. It's a huge investment in our region. It's going to make a real difference for river users like ACBL and Randy's company there. Right now, operators of full 1,200-foot tows have to break up their tows to get through the existing 600-foot lock, which obviously that creates delays, adds risk. So with that new 1,200-foot lock, we're going to be able to pass full tows through that chamber. That'll reduce congestion, improve safety, and really enhance the overall efficiency and reliability of the system. What's especially encouraging is the strong support we've seen from industry partners. So companies like ACBL can understand the value with an upgrade like that. They won't have to break up their tows anymore, which saves time, money, keeps goods moving more efficiently. So yeah, this project's a great example of how targeted infrastructure investment can deliver real economic and operational benefits across the whole region.
Randy, let's close with your thoughts on the highest priority for industry right now.
So I guess, Mary, it would be a couple of things, but really, getting Bradley mentioned earlier the congressionally mandated channel dimensions of 9 foot by 300 feet. Really from Cairo south, there's a strong initiative to get that changed to 12 foot, just because of the way our barge fleet has evolved. We have more 14-foot hull barges in our industry fleet than we ever have before. And we feel like that consistently, we should be able to have be able to transition that 9-foot depth to a 12-foot and to much lower levels than we typically see. The channel is there. Typically, whenever we're in low water season, there's 2 or 3 locations throughout the system that really cause us to limit our operating draft. And we're thinking if we can get those handful of areas maintained with a deeper channel, that we would be able to increase our drafts, which would have a huge economic impact to our industry in a positive way, to be able to increase those drafts, because that's one of our biggest obstacles now is it's not just loading drafts, but it's tow size as well. The tow size we can't do much about, because the channel dimensions from a width perspective are what pretty much limits us on tow size. But on operating draft, that's where it's all about depth, and those channel surveys are key to that. But that's going to be a process, and the Corps is working really good. They're a great partner in working with that and identifying those areas, and we know what needs to be done to make that happen. Proactive dredging will be one of them, but that's one of the big initiatives industry is having. And then really the second one is the protection of the Jones Act is which that doesn't necessarily have to do with navigation and channel maintenance, but the protection of the Jones Act throughout the industry. Right now, since there's been a waiver, that's been a key focus for industry, to make sure that that's viable going forward, and to keep those protections in place, because it protects all of industry, not just any one company. So that's really the initiatives, and then trying to have a good, robust workforce is another huge challenge for all sectors, but in an industry where people are working from home on boats for 30 days at a time, and away from their families, being able to recruit people to this industry has been a challenge, although they're good paying jobs. So that's something that we're really working and partnering with as an industry to get the word out. Here we are in graduation season, and making sure that people understand, hey, if you're not going to pursue a higher education and get a degree, that this is a good avenue for you, and there's a lot of opportunities in this industry. So just trying to sell that to everyone, and working with our industry partners to get the word out that this is a great industry to start a career that could last a lifetime.
Thank you, Randy and Bradley, for joining us today. This has been a fascinating look at the relationship between the industry and the Corps of Engineers, and the collaborative approach you all are taking to keep freight flowing on our inland waterways and enhance economic competitiveness. Special thanks to our sponsors. Their support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver the great content that is a hallmark of this annual conference. Presenting sponsors include Ameren, the Illinois Railroad Association, and GFT Infrastructure. Supporting sponsors include HNTB, Steadfast City, and the Hauser Group.